I'm just so excited to be here. This is like
Yeah.
the nicest thing. This is the most fabulous thing on my entire agenda for like a month now.
Okay,
So,
no, that's good.
I'm
Hi, and welcome to Women in Power Active. I am your host, Jacqueline Gross.
And I am your co-host, Erica Van.
Today we are talking to Liz Duclos-Orsello, and I'm very excited to hear a little bit more about her background as far as how she grew up and how like she was introduced to athletics. So Liz, if you could just tell us like your earliest active memory and then kind of go back from there. And then if you could start telling us as well about how you kind of got into running too.
sure. Well, thanks for having me here. This is wonderful to get to speak with both of you. So, I come from a family of six kids. I'm the second of six, and we grew up without a whole lot of money, and yet with a real passion and interest to just do all the outdoor things. And those are related, not having a whole lot of money and then just spending your time outdoors. I grew up in New Hampshire, in a part of the state that at the time was still fairly rural, at least where I lived. So we grew up doing all the stuff. We hiked everywhere. We went across the road and tied ropes to trees and rappelled down to river ravines. This is back in the day where parents sent you off in the morning and you came back at night. But I also grew up just kind of trying every sport that was there. I kind of consider myself an omnivore when it comes to athletic activities.
Well, I
I
like
have four brothers. Um, which just simply meant that all the competition was there all the time, and all of us were just incredibly competitive with one another. We had a basketball hoop, so I played basketball. I played soccer. I tried gymnastics and dance. Those were not my forte. I can't think of a sport that I haven't given a whirl at some point in time, and just I really enjoy being outdoors, and I really enjoy just being active. Cross country skiing, I tried downhill skiing, a little bit of everything. Master of none is what I would say. But that was very much a part of my growing up. And then transitioning from there to how I got into running, or more intentionally into running, there's a very specific starting point, which was sixth grade gym class when we had to do a 600-meter run for your PE test back in the day. And I remember lining up to do this, and we were running around the playground, and I ran my 2 laps or whatnot, and I beat everybody, including the boys. And I realized in that moment that while I was not at all a skilled gymnast and not at all graceful as a dancer, and was probably never going to make it anywhere with my softball skills, such as they were, my gosh, I could run. And I didn't know that that was a thing. And back, that was in the early 80s, and it really wasn't a thing, to be honest. For an 11 or 12-year-old girl, it wasn't a thing. There were not a whole lot of outlets. But it got me excited. And it also was something that none of my other siblings did. And so there was this opportunity for it to sort of be my thing. So that's when I got into it, but, not in a formal way. It just got stuck in my head that maybe putting one foot in front of another, which didn't require too much overthinking, was a strategy for my athletic pursuits.
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome for sure. What surprised you most about your athletic adventure and journey? Like as you grew up, you ran and you were surprised that, like, hey, this is actually a thing. And then what really stuck out to you?
Yeah, well, I'll say that my running journey, really, and my athletic journey has been a bunch of fits and starts, and I have learned a lot about myself along the way. I've had a lot of setbacks. Sometimes running has been my friend, and sometimes it's been my enemy. It's gotten me into places that maybe I didn't really need to be, sort of in my life. But in other cases, it's opened up doors. And I think what has surprised me over the years have been, there's a few things. One is how strong my body really is, and I haven't always trusted it, but I have learned that it really is. I've been surprised by and how much it can do. I've been surprised over the years about the real tight relationship between running or being active or taking risks physically and my emotional well-being, right? That those are so tightly interconnected, and our well-being emotionally and mentally being tied to our physical, not even so much our physical health, but just our physical activity, right? And taking that seriously. I've also been surprised at times at how fearless I can be in these physical spaces. Some, adventures I've had include summiting Mount Olympus, that of a story that involved hitchhiking and being stuck on the side of a mountain in Greece with my then 13-year-old. Some like capsizing in boats in frozen water and not managing to get out of that. I mean, making some questionable choices in my teenage and early years around being in spaces that probably weren't that safe to do such things. Um, and I guess I would end with just saying that I've been surprised at how much I have learned to really love my own company. That a lot of what I do tends to be solo, not because I don't enjoy people, but I have the rest of my life tends to be constantly with people needing something from me. And so a lot of my outdoor adventures and my athletic pursuits and my running has been about carving out time for me. And that's been really awesome.
That sounds awesome for sure. And well needed. We all need our own time, right? Our me time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Um, when like I kind of want to get a little bit more of a background on you because I met you through Tiffany, who um, recommended you.
So Tiffany and I, we happen to be colleagues, but that is sort of superfluous. We have been fast friends for almost 17 years from the first day we met each other when we both started working at the same university on our very first day there.
Yeah,
We met within hours and have become family, really. And I think what's interesting is that her journey to running is a very different one from mine, and our trajectories have been very different, and what we find in running and how running serves us has been very different. But we are both incredibly passionate about running as a pathway to other things, that running, especially women running, is about changing yourself and engaging with other people in the world around you in ways that can change those spaces and those places. And I think we both are passionate in different ways about this. I have a long history of connecting my work to my running to charitable organizations and using my running to lift up particular issues around social justice, both in the United States and globally. And that's where my passion is. Even though my first passion is not getting out there in the middle of lots of races, I do race. And I've been somewhat successful in that. But my love is running and pushing myself and finding my own pathway. And I love Tiffany because Tiffany's all about the events. And I love being at events with her periodically, but that's not so much where I get all of my energy from. So, but we have both struggled in our lives in very different ways. We both carry some significant challenges and some traumas, and running has served both of us in that way, although completely disparate. Very different in certain ways, but the end result has sort of brought us there.
I love what you said that like running could connect you in so many different ways for sure. Because a lot of people, when they think of running, you're just running and then you just hit the finish line and that's it. But you said that it's so much more. Specifically, what charitable events have you been like a part of and stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah, so running's a journey, and I will just say there's a course I developed about 5 years ago, which I have taught at our university called The Wisdom of Running, and it's a course that thinks about all the ways in which running is a metaphor for life, and it's with students, and we think about big issues in our world and in our own lives, and we use running to try to think through them, embody that kind of stuff. In terms of charitable work or charitable connections to my running, after I hit 40 and decided I had one marathon attempt in my 30s when I had a 2-year-old, and It was fine. It just, I was trying to qualify for Boston and that didn't happen. And I've had lots and lots and lots of injuries and surgeries and have spent a good portion of my adult life unable to run and sometimes not able to walk. So that's a little piece there. When I hit 40, I got talked into um, doing a half Ironman triathlon. Having never done a triathlon, not a thing I do. uh, Long story short, I did that 2 days after my 40th birthday. And over the following year, we had a very, very traumatic family event that happened that really knocked me to the core. And unbeknownst to anyone, I decided to try to run a marathon the next fall. I had told no one that I was doing this, including my spouse, my son. And I did that on my own on a rainy Sunday and qualified for Boston. At which point I decided that since I had a qualifying time for Boston, I wanted to run Boston and raise money for a charity that was meaningful to me without having to take up a charity bib. And that has been my move over the last 5 or 6 years. As I've qualified for Boston each year, I've sought out a charity that either one that has Boston bibs or one that is just a local charity doing amazing work, but that I could use my platform to raise money. So that first year, I raised a number of thousands of dollars for an organization here in the Boston area, Metropolitan Boston Housing, which does phenomenal work to really change the landscape of housing equity in Boston. And then actually the next year I ended up unfortunately not being in the country during the Boston Marathon. The year after that, I actually ran to raise money for Catherine Switzer's team, 261 Fearless, the first year that when she had just created that organization and she was going to be running Boston. So I told them that I had a bib, I'd run for them. But I had just come back that year from 6 months living in Greece with my son at the time of the Syrian refugee crisis that had been playing out, and had spent time there in and out of refugee camps on the the Turkish, Greek, Bulgarian border, which was not far from where we were. And the women that I met there and the families that I met there just transformed me in really important ways. And so I actually raised some money for Catherine's organization and also raised money for an organization called Eyes on Refugees. There's a smaller organization here in the Boston area that was working at the time to relocate and support Syrian refugees who were fleeing. And I have haunting images of one particular woman and her children who I met and sat with in their tent for some time. And then since then, I have run raising money for an organization here in Somerville, where I live, called the Welcome Project, which works to support immigrants which is where I live, right? Immigrants in this community. So my neighbors, my friends, my son's classmates, his teammates. It's also an organization that does really good work about protecting undocumented folks. So I've done that, and these are all ways for me to just use my running to amplify other work, right? And I'm going to be really blunt, like, I'm a skinny white lady, and I'm like a dime a dozen in the running world. I'm not really part of the running world in a formal way, but, there's nothing special about that. I'm just, the genetics, I look like this no matter what I do or don't do. But as a, like, skinny white lady of a certain class position at a certain age, I have a lot of power in these spaces, and I do a lot of work in my own professional life for these issues that I care about. And I want to, if I have the gift and the opportunity and the blessing to be able to run in a space that I can amplify that, and the Boston Marathon, for whatever else it is, people think it's really special, and so you say Boston Marathon and people are happy to give you money, I've discovered. And if I can leverage the word Boston Marathon and my running to reallocate money in a really intentional way to organizations that are transforming systems and structures, then by all means, I'm going to do it. So that's the kind of stuff that I have been doing very intentionally over the years. And it's important to me, and it's important to me for a variety of reasons, but mostly I think this is a blessing. I know what it feels like to not be able to run. I know what it feels like to be in a lot of pain. I know what it feels like to have your life upended and turned upside down on a dime, and have been very blessed when I was growing up and in my adult life that people have stepped up when we needed a lot of help.